So I want to start off by asking about the term Russian Davos. That's often used to describe the St. Petersburg Forum. Do you think that's an appropriate one, or do you think that's one that's relegated to the past and this forum has a new identity now?
Well, when I hear Davos and the people that are associated with it, and the ideologies that are associated with it, I instantly translate it into paganism, LGBT, godlessness, materialism, humanism, and those are decadent corrosives that destroy individual identity and cultural identity. So Davos is always looked at by conservatives as as a sort of a fountain of humanism and all sorts of corruption.
We cannot afford Russia to win this war. Otherwise, the US and European interests will be very damaged. It's not a matter of generosity alone. It's not a matter of supporting Ukraine because we love Ukrainian people. It is in our own interest. It is also in the interest of the US as a global player, someone who has to be perceived as a reliable partner, a security provider to the allies.
But in the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, I see a mix of national integrity, national pride, cultural identity, cultural pride, as well as the economic mathematics of business and industry.
It's striking to see the market share of Russian gas and LNG inch higher in Europe after all we have been through, and all the efforts made to decouple and de-risk energy supplies.
Russian pipeline gas and LNG continue to be supplied to EU countries, as well as to the United Kingdom, Switzerland, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Northern Macedonia. Europe deliberately exempted imports of Russian energy from sanctions, which it needs for heat and electricity, transport and industry, and cannot get any other way.
So you see a marriage of the celebration of Russian identity, Russian culture, all the unique regions of Russia. You see a spirit of beauty and elegance. You also have the foundation of family values, tradition, Russian orthodoxy.
I think that my message would be stay strong. I had my own personal experience in my history, in my personal life, to be dissident. I was a Soviet dissident. And I think how hard it is to fight against the system, against the dictatorship. But if you really believe in what you are doing, in your ideas, so I am absolutely sure that the victory will be yours. But in order to kill the great dragon, you need to be very strong and ready to suffer. Because without suffering, you could not achieve the real goal. You should be consequent. You should be morally clean in order to fight the evil. So I am on the side of modern Western dissidents. I understand how hard it is to proceed in that way, to defend such values, to stay in this position, but the truth will win.
And then you've got the mathematics of business. Business is very simple. It's logical, mathematical, profit-oriented, employment-driven. So I see all of that merging here. Davos is more like, how do we change the world? How do we push the world? How do we control the world? Which implicitly means, how do we destroy or crumble or break or push back or arrest or imprison or take the passports away from anyone that represents a threat. So I think to compare St. Petersburg to Davos is not only inaccurate, but anyone who tries to say that is either ignorant or a propagandist.
Europe is frustrated as it finds itself going around in circles, with more data revealing that the continent can't cut its ties to Russia. And what's more, it's growing a new dependency. But more on that a little bit later. Before we begin, let's just take a few seconds to remind ourselves of the West's determination and confidence that they can survive without Russian resources.
One of our major successes has been to reduce our considerable dependence on Russian energy to almost zero.
Our work of the last month really pays off, because at the beginning of the war, if you looked at the imported gas, 40% of it was Russian gas since a long time. Today, we're down to 9% only.
Eliminating Russian gas will have costs for Europe. But it's not only the right thing to do from a moral standpoint, it's going to put us on a much stronger strategic footing.
Russia uses energy as it uses food as a weapon of war. I think we have to prepare today for a scenario where we have to do without Russian gas altogether, because that scenario is not theoretical.
Well, they've been trying and failing miserably, and once again at their own expense. This was a great business opportunity for the U.S., not so much for the Europeans, who have to pay more now, but they've also been convinced that they need to develop LNG infrastructure, which many experts say is a total waste of time and money.
This is the world's most expensive and unnecessary insurance policy. Europe must carefully balance its gas and LNG systems and avoid tipping the scale from reliability to redundancy. Boosting Europe's LNG infrastructure will not necessarily increase reliability. There is tangible risk that assets could become stranded.
All this, and they're still importing LNG from Russia. Moscow, in fact, accounted for over 16% of the continent's LNG supply so far this year, and that is an increase from the year before.
If Europe is still importing LNG from Russia, it is because there is a need. With our other main suppliers, such as Norway, operating at maximum capacity, it will be hard to completely stop the flow of Russian LNG. We are still not completely out of the crisis.
France imported the most in the first half of this year, giving Russia over 600 million euros. Well, maybe that is why President Macron has been so angry lately. Russia also controls nearly half of the world's enriched uranium capacity, which is, of course, another problem for the West. The U.S. president just signed a law to ban imports from Russia, but starting from 2028. So it's not looking good, is it? Even then, the forecast is that because of these restrictions, prices will rise. And once again, you know who will end up paying for it.
The structure of the international supply chain largely includes Russia. Not only the US here in Europe, there are many water-powered reactors that depend on Russian fuel and services needed for further maintenance. I'm talking about the countries of Eastern Europe, where the percentage of nuclear energy use is very high, 30–40%, and these countries simply need their reactors to work properly.
Russia is also responsible for supplying a substantial amount of fertilizer to the continent, with exports reaching record levels in the last 2 years.
There is a real risk for Europe to become a junkie of Russian cheap urea fertilizer. From the perspective of European food security, it's terrible. Europe is not reacting to this new dependency that we are seeing being developed.
Maybe it's time the West woke up to the reality that mixing business with politics is not a great idea, at least when it comes to Russia, something which Vladimir Putin has been talking about all along. But that is, of course, if you have your citizens' best interests at heart. For Washington, it's all about strategy, not what makes sense, obviously.
We support Ukraine not out of charity, but because the people of Ukraine and their future is in our strategic interest.
They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West not given to Putin and China.
That's what it all comes down to, a race for minerals and geopolitical power. But it's Europe that's being dragged into all this and being made to look like a fool in the process, while Russia is still cashing in.
It is necessary to enhance the role of BRICS in the international finance system and expand the use of national currencies in settlements. It is one of the key topics nowadays. It is necessary to create a settlement payment system that would be independent of foreign currency and foreign banking system. This is one of the key directions of the development of our economic links. As far as you understand, this is especially important for Russia. When our banking system was cut off from the international settlement system, that was a problem. Now, more than 80% of all our settlements are done in national currencies. And as for our colleagues in BRICS, that is the major trend.
The following remarks can be noted at Sputnik Africa on June 29, 2024. The seizure of Russian assets by the collective West is a wrong move, a renowned U.S. investor tells Sputnik. Is it right? Of course, it's not right, for a country just to steal someone else's assets, legendary American investor Jim Rogers told Sputnik. Rogers said the United States will continue to assist Ukraine, despite the uncertain outcome of what the aid may bring about. When asked whether the decision to seize Russian assets would undermine the other nations' trust in the United States, Rogers said, "Many people see what's happening with the US dollar. They see that the US is seizing assets, that other people are seizing assets, so many people are now trying to find something else to use besides the US dollar." I want to repeat, the United States is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and that debt is going higher every day. Everybody knows that, and everybody's trying to find something else, Rogers added.
Hello everyone. The K-pop Connection sets off with its first installment of World in Motion discussions, delving into international affairs. 8 billion people suffer from the brutal economic, health, cultural, and political harassment imposed, on a planetary scale, by the relentless, semi-anonymous expropriating minority whom we all should expose. This expropriating minority monopolizes the monetary issuance of bank-created debt money, which is not sovereign money, but a fraud, leading to ever-escalating debt. It also holds control of cutting-edge scientific research and new technologies capable of setting humanity free from material scarcity and social competitiveness. In short, this minority handles the material conditions of contemporary social coexistence, but not in favor of the general people's interests. Such dominance is not the making of any ordinary national authorities, in any country. Nor is this minority openly confronted by opinion leaders, influencers, NGOs, businessmen, worker unions, liberal professionals, educators, or political parties. Taken together, these 8 billion people, all of us, live under social regimes designed by hostile decision-makers, whose will and interests determine the real conditions of planetary coexistence. The K-pop Connection will move forward, from today's video, to initiate its delivery of future content, which will be aimed at interpreting the nature of the forces at play, from the perspective of the moral value of human life. The scenario that unfolds before us has historical traceability and a visible direction toward the future. We will hopefully share food for thought on our selection of news, which is strictly current on the world stage. Dear friends, that's all for this international news package. Subscribe to the channel to help us produce and tailor content to the incoming news. YouTube will also inform you about the next posting of our videos on international news. If you like this content, remember to press the thumb below and share this video. Thank you very much for your valuable attention. Until next time.